It was one of those gray mornings in late November when the sky seemed undecided about whether to rain or snow. The streets of Brookhaven were slick with last night's drizzle, and the air held that sharp, cold edge that hinted winter was close. Most people hurried along, collars turned up, eyes fixed ahead, minds already at work or home or anywhere else but here. Lena Harper was one of them. She walked quickly, her breath puffing out in small clouds, her coffee cooling in a paper cup she barely tasted. She worked as an assistant at a law firm downtown, and mornings like this always made her feel like a small cog in a very large, very indifferent machine. She had missed her bus earlier because she'd stopped to find her gloves, only to discover them stuffed deep inside her coat pocket after all. That small frustration had already set the tone for her day. By the time she reached the tall glass doors of the building where she worked, she was cold, annoyed, and trying to juggle her coffee, her bag, and her phone that kept buzzing with reminders. The elevator lobby was crowded, and the receptionist barely glanced up as people streamed in. It was nothing unusual, just another morning in the city. But then, as Lena reached for the heavy glass door, someone behind her stumbled. It was an elderly woman, small and frail-looking, with a wool hat pulled low and a faded blue coat that had seen better days. She carried a large grocery bag, the kind made of canvas, and it looked far too heavy for her. One of the bag's handles had snapped, and a loaf of bread had fallen halfway out. Without thinking, Lena turned back and caught the bag before it could fall. "Oh, thank you, dear," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly, more from the cold than age. "Let me get the door for you," Lena said automatically, pushing it open and holding it wide as the woman shuffled inside. The gust of warm air from the building's heater swept around them. The woman smiled, a slow, soft smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "You're kind," she said. "Not many stop these days." Lena shrugged. "It's nothing, really." But the woman shook her head gently. "It's something," she said. "Kindness always is." And then she was gone, walking toward the elevator, leaving Lena standing there with a faint warmth spreading through her chest. It was such a simple moment, over in less than a minute, yet somehow it stayed with her as she went through her day. Work was its usual blur of phone calls, filing, and meetings that didn't end. But every so often, her mind drifted back to the woman in the blue coat. Maybe it was the way she had said those words, "Kindness always is," that lingered. When Lena left work that evening, the sky had turned from gray to a deep indigo. Snowflakes floated lazily in the air, the first of the season. She walked past the coffee shop on the corner, the one she went to every morning, and noticed the same woman sitting inside, sipping tea and staring out the window. Lena hesitated, then pushed the door open. The bell chimed softly as she entered. The woman looked up and smiled. "Ah, it's you, the door holder." Lena laughed. "That's me. I didn't expect to see you again." "I like this place," the woman said, gesturing around. "They make a lovely cup of chamomile tea." Lena nodded and ordered her own drink before sitting across from her. "I'm Lena," she offered. "Evelyn," the woman replied. "It's nice to meet you properly." For a while, they talked about small things, the weather, the coming holidays, the way the city always seemed busiest when the days were shortest. Evelyn told her she used to be a teacher, back before she retired, and that she lived nearby in a small apartment she'd shared with her late husband. "He passed away 6 years ago," Evelyn said softly. "It's just me now. But I manage. I keep myself busy with my garden and my books." Lena found herself listening intently. There was something gentle but strong about Evelyn, something steady that made the world feel a little softer. When Lena finally stood to leave, Evelyn touched her hand lightly. "You held the door for me this morning," she said. "And you've held it again now, by sitting here, by talking. That's a kind of door, too." Lena smiled. "I never thought of it that way." "Most people don't," Evelyn said, her eyes twinkling. But kindness opens more doors than we ever notice. That night, Lena walked home through falling snow, her breath mixing with the soft flakes. The streets were quiet, and for once she didn't rush. She thought about how small gestures could ripple outward in ways no one expected. The next morning, she woke earlier than usual. She decided to stop by the coffee shop before work again, hoping she might see Evelyn. But the table by the window was empty. She asked the barista if the older woman came in often. "Oh, Mrs. Hargrove," the barista said. "Yeah, she's here almost every morning. Sweet lady. Always orders chamomile tea and leaves a note for someone." "A note?" Lena asked. The barista smiled and pointed to a small basket near the counter. Inside were folded pieces of paper, each with a kind message written in neat handwriting. Lena picked one up. It read, "You matter more than you know." Another said, "The world is better because you're in it." "She started doing that a couple of years ago," the barista explained. "Says she wants people to start their day with a smile." Lena took one of the notes with her, a simple one that said, "Kindness is never wasted." The week rolled on. Lena didn't see Evelyn again, though she checked the coffee shop each morning. She began leaving her own notes beside Evelyn's, little words of encouragement scribbled during her bus ride to work. Soon, other people started adding theirs too. The basket filled faster each day. Then, one cold Monday morning in December, the barista handed Lena an envelope. "This was left for you," she said. Inside was a handwritten letter on soft cream paper. "Dear Lena. You may not realize how much that morning meant to me. The day you held the door, I was on my way to see my doctor. I'd been ill for some time, and the news I got that day wasn't good. I felt very small, very tired of the world. But your kindness reminded me that life still holds warmth, even in winter. You see, small acts matter. They ripple outward, touching hearts we may never know. You've touched mine. With love. Evelyn." Lena read the letter twice, tears blurring the words. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her bag, feeling both joy and sorrow stirring inside her. A week later, she stopped by the coffee shop again. The basket of notes was still there, fuller than ever, but there was no sign of Evelyn. When she asked, the barista's smile faltered slightly. "Mrs. Hargrove passed away last week," she said quietly. Peacefully, in her sleep. For a long moment, Lena just stood there. The sounds of steaming milk and chatter faded away. "She was lovely," the barista continued. "Always talking about how one act of kindness can change a day. Sometimes a life." Lena nodded, her throat tight. She ordered chamomile tea that morning, even though she'd never liked it before. She sat by the window, at Evelyn's favorite spot, and watched the world go by. Outside, people hurried past, faces hidden behind scarves, eyes fixed on their destinations. She wondered how many of them noticed the doors held open for them, the small gestures that stitched their days together. She took a sip of her tea and smiled. It tasted warm, gentle, and somehow comforting. That evening, Lena walked to Evelyn's apartment building, guided by the return address on the envelope. It was a small brick building surrounded by bare trees and snow. She hesitated before ringing the bell. A caretaker answered. "Are you here about Mrs. Hargrove's things?" he asked. Lena explained who she was, and he nodded. "She didn't have family," he said. "But she left instructions. She wanted her plants and books to go to people who'd appreciate them. You can take something, if you'd like." Inside, the apartment was simple but warm. Shelves lined with old books, a few potted plants thriving by the window, and photographs of a younger Evelyn with her husband, smiling in sunlit gardens, by the sea, at Christmases long past. On the kitchen table sat a small wooden box with a note, for whoever held the door. Inside were more handwritten notes, folded neatly, and a small silver key on a ribbon. There was also another letter. Dear friend. If you're reading this, I've gone where doors open differently. This key is to my garden shed in the courtyard. There, you'll find seeds, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. I hope you plant them somewhere people can see them grow. Kindness, like gardens, needs tending. Thank you for holding the door that day. Keep holding doors, for strangers, for friends, for anyone who needs them. With tears in her eyes, Lena went to the courtyard. The shed was just as Evelyn had said, small, old, filled with gardening tools and packets of seeds labeled in careful handwriting. She gathered a few and took them home. When spring arrived months later, the city thawed, and the air softened with new warmth. Lena asked permission to plant a small garden outside her apartment building, a patch of color among the concrete. She planted Evelyn's seeds there, one by one, whispering quiet thank yous into the soil. By summer, the garden was in full bloom, daisies, lavender, and bright marigolds that caught the sunlight. People stopped to admire them on their way to work, sometimes taking a photo, sometimes leaving a note on a small board Lena had placed nearby. On the board's top, she had written, "The Kindness Garden, dedicated to Evelyn, who taught me that doors open both ways." Every morning, she added a new note, just like Evelyn had done. Messages of hope, gratitude, and love. Soon, others began adding theirs. The board filled up quickly, colorful slips of paper fluttering like petals in the breeze. And every time someone stopped to read one, or smiled, or paused to water a plant, Lena thought of Evelyn, of that cold morning, of a broken grocery bag, and of how one simple act of holding a door had bloomed into something lasting and beautiful. Years later, people in Brookhaven still knew the story of the Kindness Garden. They said it began with a woman who held a door open and ended with a city holding open its heart. But Lena knew the truth, it hadn't ended at all. Because kindness, once planted, never stops growing.